so many of the women in our lives, you know, they got on when it came to women's health with breast cancer. But men's health tends to still be one of those things we don't want to talk about. So tonight, we want to open that. For me, that's where my heart is. I don't mind talking about it. Well, let me say I do mind. But as people are tuning in, I want to introduce you all to these incredible guests that agreed to come be a part of this crazy idea that I had. So right here next to me is Derek Henderson, who was on a call with me the other night. 14-year veteran baseball player. And I'm so thankful to have him, and you're going to hear his story. We're going to do our elevator speeches about what brought us here. Also, Dr. Kenny Harless, and if you haven't got to see Dr. Kenny, you're in for a treat, and I'm going to really encourage you because he's dynamic and he knows the stuff here. And then last minute, Dr. Erik Akin, thank you so much for adding your wealth. Like I said, I feel like I'm in a forest of sequoia trees here. I'm like out of my element, out of my league with these three. But I'm so thankful to have somebody of your stature being here. All three of you guys just humble me by your willingness to be a part. So thank you tonight. This is going to be recorded here, but it's also going to be going on to YouTube later. So if you missed out, or if you know people, if you got friends that, oh, well, my friends aren't on Facebook, don't worry. You can share with them YouTube because everybody's there. So really, to start things out, I'm going to give this, quick introduction. But here's the thing. I bet you're a bit like me. If you're a man, I bet you're a bit like me. You're probably like all of us. We're supposed to take care of things. We don't talk about our stuff. We're to take care of everybody else's stuff. And we sure don't want to talk about our health. I didn't want to do that. But back in 2000, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And I remember walking in knowing that I had an 18-month-old son. I had a daughter on the way. I had a family to take care of. And I was walking into the emergency room. The nurse told me to go on the phone. And I knew what it was. That right testicle was swollen and hard. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I walked in there knowing that whatever inhibitions I had, I better throw them out the window. Because I was a youth pastor, little did I know I was going to get a nickname that I had no idea I would never live down. And that was, if you know the pin, Uniball. Because that was in my future.
Yeah.
But I also learned later, people didn't want to hear that. Even as an honorary chairperson for Relay for Life, when I was giving my talk, everybody was with me until I said the term testicle. And then nobody was with me. It was eyes glazed over. Nobody wants to talk about that. But men's health is real. And when I got diagnosed with diabetes about 9 months ago, that was a punch in the gut, as if I had not faced enough things to face one more thing. And that sent me down a rabbit hole. Because when I got diagnosed with testicular cancer, there's no reasons for that. You don't have any indications, and we just don't know why it happens. But we have a lot more things to point at than what we used to. And as I went down that rabbit hole, I found, we're all excited because red dye got banned. We had, red dye 6 that got knocked off? Yeah, well, yellow dye is also there, and it's a contributing factor. And oxychlorine is part of a lot of pharmaceuticals. And you know what both of those have been found to be? Those have been part of triggers of testicular cancer. No, I may not have had it running in my family, but there were things that were there in our food system. And so tonight, we're going to talk about men's health, in particular as it relates to insulin resistance. But I've asked these gentlemen to come on here and share just a little bit about their elevator story, their pitch, because we don't have a lot of time to talk about all these things. But right out of the gate, Derek, would you share a little bit about your story, about your health as an athlete that led you down this road?
Sure, Ken. Again, thanks for having me on. This is a wonderful blessing because I didn't know my health was in jeopardy. Now I've learned that back in my 20s, that's when my bad cholesterol started. I did not know that before. Thanks to this gentleman next to me, Dr. Erik Akin, who implants my expensive $50,000 batteries as a medical device rep. But anyway, that's how I got introduced to this. But it all started when I got drafted by the Mets in 1989. I started my career in professional baseball. I ended up playing 14 years. It was a grind, but my staple diet was fruit juices, fried foods, and ice cream at night. Pure poison. Now I know that. And and now I see at my age at 56, I see why I got sick. But being an athlete playing, because baseball lasts from February to February, we don't. It is a
Wow.
real job, and you're constantly going. You're constantly eating out. You're constantly on the go. You're constantly traveling, and you don't realize what's going on in the background. Well, now I know. And well, anyway, in 2004, I retired. I ended up opened up a baseball academy in South Texas. And then after about 2 years of that, I ended up getting into the pharmaceutical world, which was my first step into the medical device world, actually a real job outside of being a professional baseball player. And then after that, I started at medical devices, and that's how I ended up getting involved with neurosurgeons and interventional pain management doctors. In 2017, I moved from Corpus Christi to Memphis. That's how I met Dr. Akin. And because his hospital said our device was too expensive, I didn't get a chance to work with him for about 2.5 years. And I had changed jobs, went in to have lunch with him, and he sits me down and says, Derek, I got something for you. And I'm like, I hope it's to implant my device. But he's like, what do you know about insulin resistance? And I go, nothing. And he goes, well, I got to talk to you about something. He goes, I respect you as a salesman. I respect you as a person. I respect you as a friend. And I want you to sell this product for me. And I'm like, I'm not selling anything I know nothing about. And he goes, okay, Derek, fair game. He goes, look, but give me 3 months. He goes, and I did tell him I had cholesterol issues and I was afraid I was about to get put on a lipid. And he goes, give me 3 months. He goes, but in 30 days, I want you to go check your blood work. And in 30 days, after being on the product, not changing my diet, not exercising more, in 30 days, I came back with a perfect lipid panel for the first time in 30 years. Blew my mind. And
Wow.
that's how I ended up, getting involved with this. I also had secondary infertility. Had my first child naturally, my second child through artificial reproductive techniques because of low testosterone. So
Mm.
I'm here. I'm a believer. I'm not even going to go into the numerous lives that this product has affected and the education on insulin resistance, thanks to Dr. Akin. But that's my story. It's real, and I will pass the mic to the next guest.
All right. Let me jump over, since that's a good transition. Dr. Akin got you going on this, and as a neurosurgeon, you've seen so much. I know both of you gentlemen, Dr. Hart, Dr. Kinney's done as well. But Dr. Akin, kind of unpack it a little bit for you about your experience.
Yes. So I grew up in a medical family. My father died from complications of what is called metabolic syndrome. That's a constellation of overweight, high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol problems, and kidney disease. As that's per the
Wow.
World Health
Yeah.
Organization diagnosis. So this he was going down this line, and I thought it was just my genetic destiny that I was going to get overweight. I was watching my belt loop go out a loop or two every couple of years, and I just thought this was the way it goes. And
Yeah.
then I came across this product, and my biggest issue was that I really had a hard time with sugar and sweets, pastries and that sort of thing. And I just thought it was a lost cause to try to get around that until I found this. It was introduced to me by a dietitian. And suddenly, like within 48 hours, I had complete command over that. It was gone. It was just like
Wow.
cured of that desire. which enabled me then to make more sensible choices. And what I love about this product, because there's a lot of touchy-feely kind of products out there, but this one
Yeah.
is things you can measure. You can measure your weight. You can measure your waistline. You can measure your hemoglobin A1C. You can measure your blood glucose. You can measure your fasting insulin levels. So it's very objective. There's nothing touchy-feely about this. And that's why I think is so powerful about it is that you go on the product, you can give it a trial run, absolutely risk-free for 90 days, and measure and watch it work. And if you don't like what it's doing for you, if it's not doing anything, which the odds are very low at that, then of course, get your money back by all means. But I've yet to see
Right.
anybody have a different experience.
Unless they
So
don't open the
that's
box.
exactly right. Which is exactly what I did when I got it. It sat on the counter for the first week. And Shannon kept calling me. She's like, how's it going on that system? I was like, oh, yeah, I remember to take it. So there's a problem with compliance, of course. But yeah.
But you know
that's
that as
the
a
deal.
doctor, your patients do the same thing, right?
Well, of course. And that's always an issue with starting anything new, a new behavior. You got to remember the new habit. But then fortunately, it's very
Right.
easy. You just mix it up and drink it, so it's not a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but yeah. Well, now one thing you mentioned though that kind of reminded me of something. You said that you may have some apprehension about talking about testicular cancer in particular. One, and we're finding now there's this huge connection between insulin resistance and cancer formation. And in fact, it may come to the very forefront. It's already come to the forefront of Alzheimer's disease, and pretty much vascular dementia and Alzheimer's, the two number one and number two
Right.
forms of dementia. Well, 80% of everybody that has Alzheimer's has insulin resistance. 80%. So they're massively connected. Now it's looking like the same.
Holy cow.
For other things. It may be
Right.
that testicular cancer is one, but it's all in how you present it, though. I once had a surgical tech. His name was Tommy Lyles, and I met him for the first time in Arkansas, Southeast Arkansas. And he says, "Hi, my name's Tommy Lyles. I've only got one testicle." I immediately liked the guy.
You don't forget that, right?
Oh my gosh.
Game, right?
So it's all in how you
Yep.
present it,
That's right. That's
So-
right. No inhibitions. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to jump over. I know like I said, I'm watching this sucker and making sure we all get some good time. Now, Kenny, you've got a story as well. So open that up a little bit for us about your experience.
Yeah, so I mean, I opened my clinic up. I was a chiropractor, no longer practice now, help people reverse insulin resistance. It's so incredible. And I mean, I found a tumor in one of my best friend's son's brains when he was 9 years old. And this is 21 years ago. And I started seeing, I'm sure Dr. Akin, you saw this, you just kept seeing people come in, autoimmune disease, I mean, it was just like you see obesity, all, and then you're just like, what is going on? And I kept thinking it was inflammation, right? I mean, that was kind of the buzzword, you know what I mean, Dr. Akin. And then I was like, and then I was eating, and how many of us on here have ever been told, you're told to move more and eat less?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Told that, type a 1 in the chat, right? Because here's what happens, right? And so I used to give that advice, and here's what takes place, right? So I'm moving 2,000 calories a day. I'm using 1,500, right? That I'm going through, and I'm eating. Well, that's a 500 calorie deficit times a week. That's 3,500 calories. Well, if I do that and I weigh 200 pounds in 200 weeks, do I weigh 0? Well, no. Well, the research shows this. Now, this is mind blowing, and this is where I want to go with this, right? So they've known since 1919, the Carnegie Institute of Washington. And if anybody on this call has ever, had any of these symptoms like myself, type me in the chat. They found that these people were tired, they were hangry. Derek, I know eating ice cream at night, man, right now, you're a big man. I wouldn't want to get hangry with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, holy smokes, right? Plus, he knows how to get fat. You know what I mean? So they're hangry, they're losing muscle. It's called sarcopenia. Yeah. They're exhausted, right? They also had diminishment of the heart stroke volume by 20%, and they were cold. So that actually, according to Dr. Bickman, the world's leading insulin resistance doctor, leads to insulin resistance. So now what is it? It's like, so I had no clue, and I was doing all these things. I was getting fatter, I was getting sicker, and my appendix ruptures, and I almost died. Now people might be, well,
No way.
Insulin resistance, when you eat something that spikes insulin, it shuts down your immune system 50% for 2 hours. So look at our kids 100 years ago.
Crap.
Look at that. Their whole life, they consumed as much sugar as we do today by the time we're 7 to 8. And when you eat fructose, which is hidden in all the fruit, right? All the food, like Derek was alluding to, right? That
Yeah.
causes glycation, oxidation at 250 times the rate of glucose. It's not the
Wow.
same thing, people. So my appendix ruptures. I'm in the hospital for 2 months. Anne Marie reaches out to me, goes, "Hey, I've watched you fast for years. Like, you need to check this out." Because people don't want to do a point of
Right.
entry. It's friction. Dr. Akin knows that. When you're a
Mhm.
doctor, like, this is what, like, you just trying to get them to do something. They don't even know what a carbohydrate is. And I'm not making fun. People just don't know, right? They're diabetics
No.
and they don't know
Yeah.
it turns
Yeah.
into sugar.
Yeah.
And so I
Right.
start taking this. It was 2 hours. I'm peeing like a racehorse. I'm like, I'm all in. What do I got to do to teach this stuff, right? Like, I know what it's doing.
Right.
A week goes by. My wife's like, "What are you, like, you're shrinking." And my wife had PCOS for 20 years. So she had the fertility aspect in a woman, right? 20 years of this. After 2 months of this protocol, my wife reverses her insulin resistance, which gets rid of the PCOS. We had 2 miscarriages in 3 months. And she also, guys, she lost 12 pounds. That she'd been doing this for 20 years. And she was tiny, petite, skin tags. She had to eat every couple hours, all the signs, right? So we had the
Right.
belly fat. You got the eye floaters. These are signs of insulin resistance. But that was kind of
Yep.
my thing. And now I've got 1,000 plus people taking this thing.
That's
I mean, in a matter of months.
Wow.
So, and
That's
I've
awesome.
seen everything, and I know that if you give this thing a shot, if you just do it consistently, it won't let you down. And when it doesn't work, it's because you didn't work.
That's right.
That's the straight
Yeah.
truth.
You know, he was
Absolutely.
talking about the immune system, and 80% of your immune system resides around your intestines.
Yep.
And so what happens in your intestines, your immune system, you need it. It can be a benefit, but it can also work against you. If it's ineffective, it works against you. If it's overactive, it works against you. And
Wow.
if your gut
Okay.
health is poor,
Hey, Doctor,
Yeah.
can explain that, right? So people are like, so if it's
Yeah.
overactive, right, that's more like
That's
asthma and things like that, right?
exactly right. So it's like, for example, if you get exposed to
Right.
something that you're allergic to, it causes your immune system to release all of these chemicals. And that's the induration, the swelling you get in your face and that sort of thing. It's a byproduct of a process that's trying to control getting rid of that thing. But it can start to do this without a stimulus. You don't need that going on. That causes a lot
Really?
of oxidative stress in every tissue
Right.
of your body. Your eyes, your brain, your muscles, your liver, your kidneys, everything. This process is going on, not maybe at the same intensity of an immune reaction, but it's at a low grade level. So it's, think of it like this. If your body is your house and the immune reaction is a fire, well, if you notice like a corner of your house was charcoal red, maybe it's not on fire. Are you going to go to bed, sleep on that a few months before you decide to do something about that? Or are you just going to put the
No.
freaking fire out,
No.
you know?
But Dr.
And so-
Akin, that is like Derek, right, playing baseball, and he rolls an ankle. That's right. Acute inflammation.
That's a big
is
deal,
good.
yeah.
That's how you heal, right?
Yes.
But when you have chronic, is what we're talking about.
Yes.
That's insulin
Right.
resistance, right?
Yes.
Like that's what this thing's causing, guys. You know, I took
Well,
care
let's stop. I want to go back just for a second, real quick, because this was something that for me kind of picked up on that I wanted to let Derek hit on this too. But as I learned about insulin resistance back in 1980, okay, I'm in 3rd grade. I was a soccer player. I started having joint pains. My knees would swell. I got diagnosed. And if you think about the timetable here, 1980. So all of our food system is shifting and changing. Processed foods become a huge part of this. I get diagnosed with child's rheumatoid arthritis.
vending machines.
My
came in,
grandmother,
right? Yeah.
right,
Sorry.
exactly,
Yeah.
all of that, every bit of it. My
Oh, man,
grandmother,
yeah.
here's the thing, my grandmother had arthritis, destroyed her body. The doctors told her, don't take any seed oils.
Mm.
They didn't say any of that to us. They didn't say anything about me, but I can look back on it. So for me, insulin resistance and my health today was the signs of it. Whereas a kid growing up in the 70s, it was
Absolutely.
Right.
It
If
was
you
all
smoked a
there.
cigarette 40 years
Now-
ago, it didn't go away, right?
Right.
Like it's still
Exactly.
damaging your body.
Yeah,
It doesn't-
your doctors were, your doctors were endorsing it. I mean, so let's talk a little bit about us men. So Derek, you're a professional athlete. You were there. Talk a little bit about the stigma. I was kind of opening up the hornet's nest maybe a little bit for some of your friends, but we as a society put athletes up on this pedestal. You guys are the pinnacles of manhood.
Right. So, yeah,
How much
no,
did you guys talk about this stuff?
not at all. All we did was travel and eat and stay up late, drink, whatever. And it's so funny you say that, Ken, because today I thought about two of my best friends that if I had a known this back in 2011, both of them would still be alive. Will Rowland,
Oh, man.
drafted by the Kansas City Royals. He's 5 years younger than me, passed away of a sudden heart attack at 51. Okay. And then Pete Bynum, star athlete at Louisville. He was a running back for 3 years at Louisville University, passed away in his sleep at 43 of a sudden heart attack. And now I know that
Damn.
because of insulin resistance, regardless of being an athlete, because of insulin resistance, that's why they're not here for the most part. I will say I'm not a doctor like Kenny and Dr. Akin, but the more I learn about how this stuff affects our health, no matter what you are, it is just an amazing thing to understand and try to learn how to reverse it and tell everybody. And I've heard Kenny he's awesome. He'll say, look, if you don't tell somebody about this, you're doing them a disservice. And I love that attitude that he has. And that's how I feel about my fellow athletes, because here's the thing, Kenny, I can go into a gym now at 56 years old and I can look at people, because I still work out, I do circuit training, and I can look at people 30 years younger than me and they look like they're 20 years older than I am.
Crazy.
And I'm not
Wow.
bragging on myself, but what I'm saying is this affects everybody. Like, it is just the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. So yes, the stigma of athletes being, because we think we're invincible. We as baseball players think we're going to play forever. It's just a stupid way to think, but something as simple as what we put in our mouth affects our health for the long term.
That's so simple,
Damn.
right? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, people don't grasp. Like, we're finding non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in 3-year-old kids. Like,
Yes.
the number one fast food restaurant on the planet, guys, isn't McDonald's. It's the public
Nope.
schools food system.
That's right.
Right? And so
Yep.
you
That's right.
start, and if you have too much sugar in the brain of a child, it's called ADHD. So they start the kids
Yeah.
off with a bowl of loops of fruit, right? Because it's the most important meal of the day. What do they call that? Break what? Right? It's what you eat first. But they did it to sell us cereal. So then you're eating orange juice,
Yeah.
all this added sugar, and like you're blowing the kids, and like your insulin spikes, right? It's
Yep.
like alcohol. If you start with a little bit, you need more. And then you need more, and you need more. And this is exactly what the cells in the body do. You put on your noise canceling headphones and stop listening, and the cells stop responding. So you got to make more. And so then you get all the fatty lip, you get all the other stuff that happens, the damaged gut, like Dr. Eric was talking about. Now your cells are so screwed up that you're attacking your own tissue, guys.
Yeah.
Like, that is what we are dealing with, and it's never been seen before. And people are like,
Right.
well, I used to do this, and it's not how much you move. They know medically, guys. Dr. Robert Lustig is is an endocrinologist, and he studies kids,
Right.
and they found hypothalamic tumors in the brain, excessive amounts of insulin. The kids were morbidly obese, and the further they drove the insulin down, the leaner they got, and they would start to move and exercise again.
That's right.
When people have insulin resistance, you don't want to move, right? You guys all look younger, as do I, because when you go into fasting like we teach, using this protocol, you go into autophagy. So you start eating the damaged parts. It's like buying a renovated home and you tear it to the studs. That's what autophagy does. And then when you finally eat, you go back into sugar burning. And this is why, Derek, if you're an athlete, superb athlete, obviously elite. So whenever I would try to lean up in the past, I would always lose muscle if I tried to lose fat. Have you noticed, or any of you guys, when you're doing this, I just did 25 pull-ups as a 47-year-old man. I've never done 25 pull-ups. I'm actually stronger now than I
Right.
was. And I'm actually leaning up and putting on muscle. And Dr. Akin was talking about that before. That's how, when your gut heals, you start methylating foods, you start putting muscle back where it should be, and you start getting testosterone again. I have 65-year-olds
Right.
going, hey, doc, I'm waking up and I got a tent pet
Yeah,
parked down there.
that's
I'm like,
right.
yeah, you're supposed to. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely, right?
Right.
Doc, I
The
mean,
body's doing what it's supposed
Doc, why
to.
don't you explain more of that? Like, Dr. Akin, go into, so people don't understand the leaky gut. They think that's like, I don't know, like a boogie story or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I
Like,
used to too. I used to think it was touchy feely science too myself until I actually started looking into it a little bit. And so the way it works, you've got this lining on the inside of your intestine. These cells are shoulder to shoulder. They're like what keeps the bad guys out. There's tons of
Right.
bacteria, pathogens in your, like, per bowel movement is 60% bacteria by weight. Okay, so you got to realize there's a ton of
Way.
bacteria in that. Yeah. So
Okay.
the majority of your poops are bacteria. So
Hey,
it's a
Doc,
living
when you
organism.
say that, when I was in the hospital, I'm so sorry.
No problem.
I had my appendix rupture, and they missed an abscess. They didn't do a CT scan. So I went home for 4 days. Okay, I
It's a
can't move,
life-threatening
can't get out of bed.
situation.
Right.
Yeah.
So Doc,
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
like, they gave me so many antibiotics that when I had a bowel movement, there was no smell because it's the bacteria that gives off the smell, right? So,
Yes.
and I was like, I had 31,000 white blood cell count, and I should have 4,500. I mean,
Right.
literally, they missed that. But I just, when you're talking about feces, right?
Wow.
This is
Yeah,
funny.
that's right.
When you fix the gut, you don't have to wipe your butt. That's the truth.
Yeah, everything's
That's right.
everything's
That's
on the
exactly
table tonight,
right.
guys. I mean, we're just going to talk about all of it right
We're
here.
gonna have fun here.
We're-
You know what I mean?
You notice
Yeah,
the
man,
change.
that's
It
what
goes
it's
back
about.
the way it was when you were 17, you know? What's toilet paper for?
I think it's the
I'm gonna
locker room.
tap
We're
into
opening the
that.
locker room right here. That's it. That's it. Oh, so yeah. So, Dr. Akin, keep going on this a little bit. You got that science down.
So the way it works is the way your body identifies the bad guys is they have to be presented to your immune system. But there's an order to this. It comes through a particular type of cell, and then it enters. It's like coming through the U.S. border. You got to do it the right way. Otherwise, they don't know who you are. You get shot on sight, and crazy things start happening. So the deal is, no, I'm not trying to be political, by the way, at all.
No.
But that said,
no political, no politics.
But that said is
Right.
so if it doesn't come through, if it sneaks through, if you got a leaky gut, these guys aren't shoulder to shoulder anymore because you're eating stuff that's not good, then stuff sneaks in and bypasses it. Your immune system never really gets a handle on it, and it doesn't identify it. So suddenly it can flourish inside of you, unrestrained, unmitigated. And now you're in trouble. You get bad things starting to happen. So that's the problem with the leaky gut. Not to mention, like, the inflammatory response that occurs
too, right, Doc? Inflammation hurts you, joints hurt everywhere, right? Like,
yes,
you're getting all these itis diagnoses. That means inflammation or fire in Latin, right? But the biggest thing you said earlier, Doc, I want to piggyback on. The problem is the brain doesn't have pain receptors. So we don't feel the fire in the brain like we do in a joint because too much sugar in this joint, right? It's arthritis, right? Or endocarditis in the heart. So it gets to the brain and your brain's on fire. Now, how can we see early signs of this? Well, you ever walk into a room and forget why you're there?
Yeah.
That's because you're sugar burning, right? And sugar creates glycation. It gums things up, which is why you see people getting eye floaters because it blows up the capillaries, right? The kidneys you're peeing all the time. Like, these are all signs of this stuff. And people have no freaking clue, right? And it's 10, 20 years. And we're talking about cholesterol. Like, Derek, you were labeled with cholesterol, right? You know, you were seeing that pop up. The British Medical Journal says if you're put on a statin drug, you gain 4 days of life. Okay. Guess what causes your cholesterol issues? It's insulin resistance, right?
Yes.
And you lose 10 to 20 years of your life. Well, you know, God, I'm very biblical, and no good tree can bear bad fruit, right? Insulin resistance is 90% of all chronic disease. Now, Dr. Erik spoke about metabolic disease, and what's the crux of all that is insulin resistance. But if we don't know it's tied to insulin, right? Derek, if you don't know that I'm throwing you a curveball and I'm throwing you fastballs all the time, and you can slay those, right? But if you can't figure out how a curveball's coming in, so it's like me dropping you off, and I'm like, oh, you're down in Texas. I'm going to throw you up in Boston. You don't know you're there, and I blindfolded you, right? Okay, and I drop you off. How are you going to get to Disney World if you don't even know where you're starting? How are you going to hit a curveball if you don't even? I mean, it's so simple, but people don't even know where they're starting, right? And that's why we're all on here. I'm on vacation with my family because I don't want another mother to scream and cry when they lose a kid because I can't stand the thought of that. I can't stand the sound of that anymore, man. And you're seeing this at higher rates in kids. You're seeing this at higher rates in people. And we do this because we love you guys and we want to help you. Because if you understand, you will do differently. If a mom understands, oh, my kid's got ADHD, but they don't like candy. Well, do they like pizza and pasta and potatoes? Because I sure do. Well, yeah. Well, that's carbs. That's sugar.
Chicken nuggets, man. We got to have that chicken nuggets. You know, whatever they'll eat.
You really
bring
have
up
to
a
raise
good
your
point.
standard. about that, or we need to,
Right.
as a country, raise our standards about how we eat. There's a lot of people focusing on the meds to get you to eat less, but really, social pressure, as we discovered, can move mountains. And we need to really
Right.
have more of a culture. We've had a YOLO culture around eating. Life's too short to eat healthy food. And that's not good. We need to raise the standard. People frowning on you for the way you eat, shame is powerful. And honestly, I think it's something that we should consider, because how else are we going to do it?
You know,
You can't
Doc,
drug
if
Well, let
you
me.
people
have a
out of it.
Ferrari, you're right. If you have a Ferrari, do you guys throw like freaking vending machine food in it? Like, think about what
No.
God gave you. Like, people
Yeah.
make babies out of freaking garbage food, right? It's not even food. If shelf life goes up, your life goes down. And yet you wouldn't do that to a Ferrari. Now, right? I mean, how many
Right.
cars do we have in our life? Well, guess what's buying those cars? Is this
Yeah.
temple. So why in the world would you not put great freaking, and you know what's funny? Yeah, people complain about like it's expensive. What's expensive is getting sick, because 86% of all medical bankruptcies occur from medical bills. That's what's expensive, right? Eat
Yeah.
real food. It's more nutritious, it's more dense. You're gonna not have to eat as much, right?
Mhm.
And like when you do these things, you're putting the fuel in your body for your body to create and do what it's supposed to. Like, it's so simple.
You bring up a good point, Dr. Kinney, and I want to kind of tie that back into about how we're eating, because again, from one of my stories, and this last weekend, Dr. Lauren Gagliano, my wife, and I got on, and we did a live, and the reason we did it together, we're both widows because of what we're talking about here. I lost my first wife to colon cancer, and that we know is directly tied. Now, she had some DNA markers that didn't that spurred that on,
Mhm.
but it is completely related to the diet
Yeah.
that she had, that we had. It wasn't like that she was alone in that. We fed it to our kids. It was what we knew, because this is what our society's been feeding us. And when we talk about, okay, we don't want another husband or mom or dad, but let me tell you, this kills.
Right.
I saw it. Dr. Gagliano saw it. This kills.
Well, you know,
And our
Kim,
children now only have one parent because of this.
Kim,
Wow.
you said, right? Because people want to say it's genetic. Okay, let's think about
Yep.
this for a second. And I'm not saying there's not genetic components and things and tons, right? But
Oh, no.
if there's
Oh, it's
23,
there. It's there.
right, 23 chromosomes from mom, 23 from dad. That's why the company's called 23andMe, right? Boom. That's all the genes you ever get.
Right.
Well, then why does it take 50 years to get insulin resistance or diabetes? And then 70 years to get cancer if it's the gene?
Mhm.
Right? If
Right.
it's the gene,
If it's
it would
solely
be
that,
expressed
yeah.
in the beginning, right? It's called epigenetics.
Yeah.
It's your surrounding. If you hang around bad people, you're going to be a bad person. If
Mhm.
you hang around good people,
Who you flock
right?
with,
Yes,
you flock
right.
together.
The good books
Yeah,
are
Birds
there,
of a feather.
right? Yes, absolutely,
Yep.
Yeah,
man. I
that's
tell
right.
people all
That's
the time,
exactly
right?
right. And I
Absolutely.
want to talk about poop one more time.
Yes,
So,
please.
so
Talk
because
about poop.
because
Go
Go 5
for
years
it.
old.
it's
Yeah, let's do
incredibly
it.
important. We were talking about gut health for just a second, but
Yeah.
what is made by those bacteria inside your intestines is critically important. And are any of you guys familiar with any of the research regarding fecal transplants? Have you heard about
no.
I
this?
have, yes.
So yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
so they
Yeah.
can take an obese person and they can transplant feces from a lean person who has been
Yeah.
eating correctly. You'll start to see metabolic changes in the obese person. This is how important these
Your
bacteria
microbiota is,
are. They're creating
Yeah.
things that make you metabolically well. So if you
It's
and
disgusting, but it
one
works,
it's true,
right? I
and
mean,
one single meal, but there's no need to transplant. One single meal can
right.
drastically change, because there's like 5 generations, 6 generations of these bacteria made every day. One meal can change the milieu of bacteria in your guts. So
Yeah.
once you just start doing this, putting this stuff in your intestines, you're immediately having a big,
Well,
huge
that's
effect.
what
So
the fiber does, right? The
yeah,
insoluble portion is a prebiotic. And like you were
yeah,
saying with the leaky gut,
yeah,
right? So if
yeah,
this is your intestines up here, right? And then
right.
this is the tight junction cells as they should be. If you
Hmm.
have
Right. Right.
Prometheus, which your seed oils and things like that, Ken, you were talking about this, you feed the fructose and all this stuff, they grow and they create a
Yeah.
gap. When they create that gap, LPS, it's called lipopolysaccharides, excrement, endotoxins, all these things seep down. Your immune system, like
Yeah.
Dr. Akin was saying, is down here. It's like an Amber Alert. Everybody's phone's going off, and it starts attacking tissue,
Yep.
right? But what happens when you feed the 100 trillion microbiota this stuff, right? Fiber, the insoluble and soluble, it starts to grow the bacteroides.
Yeah.
And now the inflammation goes down, the gut junction shut, LPS is also not leaked out. And all of a sudden, people's autoimmune issues start to get better.
Yeah.
IBS, rheumatism, lupus. I've seen it all.
Yep.
And it's
All-
the
Right,
balance of
right.
the immune system, right?
You know
three
what?
of us deal with spine. Oh, go ahead, Derek. You go.
I was going to say, there was something I saw, this little product here, this isn't the fiber, this is the Unimate. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. started that. So Dr. Kenny was talking about the fiber. The Unimate is amazing to me as well, because as an athlete, I didn't know not one athlete that did not try to get an edge by getting more energy.
Focus.
And that's where
Yeah,
the steroid thing came in. And if any of my baseball buddies are on this call, they understand it. You know what? Major League Baseball turned a blind eye to steroid use. They didn't test for it. And then when he got caught, shame on you.
Yeah.
But it was an edge that you would get. And the other day, I did a post, because when you done with the season in the off season, we would go play winter ball in South America, Dominican Republic, Cuba. And you know what they had on their benches? They didn't have jugs of Gatorade. They had jugs of coffee. And you know what's in coffee? Chlorogenic acid.
Yes.
And and it's an absolutely amazing ingredient that this is the most powerful thing that they have on it. To get that, your ketones go up, your GLP-1 goes up. And that's why Vladimir Guerrero is on it. So I'm glad Kenny gave a plug to the fiber. I had to give a plug to that Unimate. So,
Well, you know what else?
Well, I don't really, and I want to go. Yeah, well, I want to go into it. You know, and that's an important part of it. I want to talk too just a little bit about if we're just going to change our habits, because it really is about lifestyle. And that's what we're getting to. As men, we've talked about, hearing from Derek and you guys as doctors, and you guys have seen it. I've lived it as well, that we have crappy lifestyles, and we're surrounded by crap food and crap behaviors that we're encouraged in it. I mean, we're on a platform that if we're not flocking together with the right people, we're going to see crap behaviors in a lifestyle. But we need to learn a different lifestyle, and that's part of what we're talking about. We want to talk a little bit about this protocol, but specifically, really fiber and fasting is the root of this. And what we're going to talk about is a little bit about that willpower in the bottle. I wanted to start with talking to allow Derek to kind of talk about what kind of impact has the idea of fasting had on your life. How have you approached that as part of your lifestyle? Because that's something that we all do as well. What have you found as you've gone through kind of making sure that you're on a time to eating plan? How has that impacted you?
Well, it's funny you asked that, Ken, because had Dr. Akin that day told me, Derek, you got to fast, I'd have been like, I'm not doing this, because I'm a foodaholic, But he explained to me, what's that?
That ice cream, man.
Yeah, I'm a foodaholic. But anyway, he explained to me, he goes, Derek, when you go to bed at night, you fast. It's called intermittent fasting. And you know why that's important? And over time, I didn't know that in the beginning, but over time, he goes, that's what keeps your insulin levels low. Of course, I didn't know what the heck it was, like I told him. And so as I got on this, what was crazy was, there's two things that's happened to me. My snacking has gone away. I probably had ice cream for the first time in about 2 months, during the holidays. And it's just, you don't think about food the same way.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I'm already a meat eater. And there are times when I eat a steak that I can't even finish it because of satiation. And so
hearing an athlete say that, come on now, really?
I'm telling you, it's an amazing. You ask me how this is affecting me. That's the biggest change. I don't overeat anymore. I don't, my eyes aren't as big as my stomach anymore. And it's an amazing thing. And I talked about my cholesterol, Ken, and the funny thing was, I didn't try to lose weight, but I lost 25 pounds trying to fix my cholesterol. So what does that link to?
Right.
Insulin resistance. So, and how many of us have been in the gym working our butt off trying to eat right and don't lose a pound? As soon as you fix insulin resistance, Boom. And that's what
It
happened
all
to me.
changes.
It all changed.
Well,
Right.
Derek, what's funny,
Yeah.
I want to say this real quick. When you fast, right, the research shows if you fast and you go low carb, you increase the metabolic rate 300 calories a day. How
Yeah.
much work would we
Yeah.
have to do on a treadmill to get rid
Yeah.
of 300 calories,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, I just want to
Right.
throw that in. It was really
Yeah.
powerful to read
No.
this study. So,
No, absolutely. Because I'm going to unleash the two of you guys to talk a little bit more about the science. So
Yeah.
just hang with me, because
Yeah.
I want to hear you guys know it. And like I said, we're kind of walking through that. So with that, the other part that for me that I learned was the importance of the order in which we eat. And while as we come through this, we just need to be eating good stuff. We need to eat real food. That is the most important thing. But like when we go to the Mexican restaurant, which I love, it's Tuesday and it's Taco Tuesday. So when you go to the Mexican restaurant, they're going to load you up with chips and salsa. Man, I can eat the baskets of that. But that is full of starch and carbs. That is nothing to help your body. And we talked about leaky gut and the impact of that. I have been on Nexium for almost 20 years now, prescription strength and above, because it's just ripped, eating this stuff, going to the steakhouse and getting the rolls, you engulf that. The body can't process that naturally. You're not intended to. And so learning that fiber and eating those fibrous carbs, because, is so critically important to what we do. Thinking of, for me, spinach, broccoli, cauliflower, those are real easy ones. There's a lot more out there. But even with that, we don't get enough fiber. There's not enough in our meal. But if you start with that's a huge help, and you need that. And then protein and the healthy fats are key to that. As somebody that myself, I've dealt with, depression and chronic depression and anxiety, starting on eating more attentive of healthy proteins and meats has helped heal my brain, that I'm no longer taking that medication that I've been taking since cancer. The amount of anxiety that developed because, I'm worried about providing for my family, and yet I've got all these diseases and all this sickness, and I've had cancer. When's it going to happen again? What's going to happen next? So, what we're talking about here, is a real simple lifestyle change of behavior, but it's also a hard one to make, because we've really established this world we live in is just, it's damn hard to be a guy and get through this with all the crap around. And so we have all found, and others have, a natural protocol. And I'll tell a little bit more of my story. Is my wife is a doctor. She was the one that found this. She was diagnosed with diabetes. We didn't tell each other we even had it. She started doing this on vacation. And I'm going, what the hell are you doing? Woman, what's going on here? And I'm watching her over months. She's dropping weight. She no longer has neuropathy. The fibromyalgia in her hands as a dentist that was causing so much pain as she was caring for people was gone. And after a few months of me just trying to calorie count, work out religiously, just burn the calories and get nowhere, I said, okay, fine. Let me learn what I need to learn. And that changed everything. So, Dr. Kinney, kind of unpack. I'd like you to unpack a little bit about what Umate is. And since we were talking about gut, Dr. Akin is awesome about talking about poop and guts. Talk to us. I want you to talk to us a little bit about balance. So, Dr. Kinney, would you kind of open that up a little bit here as we kind of bring things, watching our clock here?
Yeah. So I've been intermittent fasting for years, but what you see in people is they're like, I'm intermittent fasting, but I'm not losing weight. Well, if that's the case, you're insulin resistant, number one. So if your blood sugar drops, right, like when you wake up in the morning, when that's low, if you eat, you break the fast, you're in sugar burning. If you don't eat, you keep it into what's called fat burning and making ketones, right? You actually turn fat into ketones, which heal the brain, all kinds of other things. So people have trouble with that. So if they can't convert because they're insulin resistant, the body will actually create glucagon. It dumps the glycogen back in the bloodstream. Now the blood sugar goes up. So then insulin pulls it back down. So now there's nothing left for the brain. This is why people get hypoglycemia. right? They want to go lay down. They feel bad, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so the tea
Right.
is a chlorogenic extract. And what it is, it's loaded. It's the highest amount ever, and it's literally that can be found. And this stuff acts like natural metformin, but there's zero side effects. So it keeps your blood sugar and your insulin low. And when insulin is low, the fat has got to go. You actually allow your body to release fat from storage. But when you're eating, this is
Right.
why they give you chips to start a meal of bread. Once you pop, you can't have just one, I
Stop.
guarantee, right? They tell you what they're doing to you, right? Okay. So this
Yeah.
also stimulates GLP-1, like Derek said earlier. The most powerful GLP-1 in the planet is the one God gave you that you create from your own temple. And this stimulates that, right? With
Yes.
zero side effects. And the thing that's interesting, God bless those people with GLP-1s, and I'll be quick. If they're doing that, 70% are off that drug in 2 years. It's being linked to pancreatic and thyroid cancer. It can cause gastric paralysis. And every 10 pounds somebody loses, 5 pounds is muscle. So now when they go off the drug, they've got less muscle, their metabolism's slower. It's called sarcopenia and osteoporosis. Now they can't burn the fat. And so they put more fat on, and now they're in a worse position. This can be done
Right.
coincided with that, right? So then they get taking the meds and they quit. They're like, man, I don't have any left. But this is actually, we know, right? And so then this has saponins, and the saponins suppress LPS that Dr. Akin's going to go into with leaky gut. And so LPS stands for lipopolysaccharides that are found in the cell wall of the bacteria you don't want. And when those seep through those junctions, they cause the immune system to go haywire. So while you're drinking this actually will also reduce inflammation through the body. It'll create ketones. It helps reverse the insulin resistance. It feeds the gut and keeps it at bay, and it helps you, if you fast 24 hours, create new stem cells that fix the gut.
Right.
So that's a whole other topic. But Dr. Akin, I know we got like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
so man, your
Yeah.
floor, brother.
So the benefit of the balance aspect of this, there's a lot of fiber powders that are out there, and I couldn't understand because I had done this before, these sugar cravings I had and all this, and I'd
Right.
always heard take more fiber.
Yeah.
So I got on Benefiber. I tried Metamucil, and it did absolutely nothing for me. And I couldn't understand that. What was different about this? And so I'll tell you part of it. So number one is there's multiple sources of fiber. What we found out in just very recent years is that you have these multiple types of soluble fiber, but each one has its own strength. And so, for example, psyllium husk is one of the more popularly used ones. It's good for the cholesterol, but beta glucans are another type. They're good for reducing inflammation. And then there's the pectins. Those are good for satiety and weight management, and so on. So what they've done is they took multiple sources, not just one, but multiple, and put it in. And not only that, but these are very high grade fiber. They grow their own, they audit it. That means they're testing it 4 times before it hits that packet to make sure it's bioactive.
Wow.
A lot of these companies don't really, you can eat off of the floor inside that factory. It is extremely
I've
clean
been there and
Yeah.
seen
in
that.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are no
Yeah.
contaminants
Yeah.
in there. And
Yeah. It's
so,
amazing.
but the other part of this, why I think, because I've seen a lot of experts, so-called experts, doctors on TikTok, they read the ingredients on our packet and they go, "Oh, this is a scam. There's only 3 grams of there's only 3 grams of fiber in there. It's a scam." Now, the first thing I want to ask each one of these jackasses is, how many of your patients have you put on this? How
Right.
many have you put on there and then watched for 3 months
Hey,
and
they're
see
all
what happens?
on
Because
cholesterol meds, though, Doc.
yeah, right, exactly. They're all over that. Yeah, and I want to
Right.
say, look, I've gotten 3 multi-decade diabetics off of all of their insulin, all of their hypoglycemic agents. How many of you gotten off? And
That's
I
right.
guarantee you, none
That's
of them.
Wow.
Okay.
impossible. You can't do that, right? That you can't like.
Yeah,
That's
right,
not
right. In fact, their doctors are
Why
like,
are we dealing
whatever
with
you're
thousands
doing,
of
just keep
people?
doing it. And I'm like, you're darn tooting. So anyway, so it drives me crazy. It's so irritating. But anyway, yeah, the other part of it that's in this mix, because it's not just fiber, it's this mix of polysaccharides. They have 7 sources. A lot of people don't know about, I didn't even know about polysaccharides when I was reading. I was like, what is this? So polysaccharides are a form of molecule. It's multiple chains, as it suggests, as saccharides. These are sugar chains, but they're not digestible. They're in a different form that your body doesn't have enzyme to digest them. They're only partially digestible. And they also have tremendous benefits to your immune system, to your satiety, to neurotransmitter production, to gut health, and all this stuff. So those two things mixed together in so many sources, it's unbelievable the benefits. This is why you start after 2 days on this packet, you know something has changed inside your body. You're not as hungry,
Right.
and things are starting to already get better within really just hours, days, a couple days. So
Hey, Doc, I heard this too, Doc. They were talking about, like the insoluble fiber that you were just talking about. They were talking
yes,
about that's like a lattice, like a colander if you were making like
yes,
spaghetti, right? And then
right.
the insoluble fibers, which we get like through chia seeds and other things, but what's in our stuff is it fills the holes, right? It plugs the holes up. So now you're not getting that insulin surge back to the liver. And
Yeah,
that's a
it
whole other
Right.
binds
thing.
up it binds up the carbohydrates that you consume immediately behind it, so that some of them are not absorbed at all. Some of them eventually get absorbed, but it's at a very slow rate. Think of it like a time release carbohydrate.
Yep.
It's just like when you eat a handful
Right.
of almonds. There's
Mhm.
carbohydrate in almonds, but you don't get they've only got a glycemic index of like 15. It's very low. By glycemic index, I mean how fast does it raise your blood sugar? It can raise it a little, but nothing like eating a handful of sugar, because it's mixed with all this fiber. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so it's that fiber that slows down how fast these carbs hit your bloodstream, which is very important because that's what keeps your insulin levels low. Your cells don't get exposed to a high dose of insulin, and you start reversing your insulin resistance. The cells get a chance to get sensitive to it again, and you stop all the inflammation. High levels of insulin turns on your immune system, so you start having this inflammatory response de novo without provocation, or without a good reason. You see, so
Right.
that's
Right.
why. And Dr. Kinney and I and Derek are all dealing with back pain patients, and forever and a day, I thought the vast majority of these patients were here with me because of
Spinal
smoking.
injuries, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or that, right?
or spinal injury, and I thought it was a smoking problem, whatever, for the most, but I could never account for those people that didn't smoke, and there was a lot of them, and I started to realize of the
Wow.
people I'm putting on the operating table, 50% of them have outright diabetes. But if I checked to see how many of them were insulin resistant,
Yep.
probably all of them,
Yep.
probably all.
But hey,
Yeah.
Doc, did you ever see that too? They say 93%, right,
Yeah,
insulin resistance in the
yeah,
population. But like I say it like you, I mean, it's almost everyone because it's the guy who's like,
yeah,
I don't have that problem, like we're talking about, right? And
yeah,
they
right.
do have
You're the
that
one.
problem. Yeah, you're the very one.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah, we found
yes,
you.
absolutely.
Oh
Well,
Yeah.
hey
man.
man,
Well,
we
hey
got Ken, we
guys,
got like
yeah,
We
we got to
better
wrap
go
this up.
back up.
Yeah. And we lost Derek. I've been trying to add him. We lost him a few minutes ago, and I'm not sure what happened. So I hate that. So, but I do want to say just a couple quick things as people are tying up here, and we've got to go. You guys have provided so much information, and it looks like we've had a lot of people really interested. I think we need to get back together again. And so we're going to plan on doing some more of this men's health stuff because it clearly is a need. People are messaging me about wanting more information and hearing us talk about this. And I know we got some other doctors that are in our network of friends that we know that have been dealing with this too. So we need to definitely make plans to tackle this some more. But if there's a way to get in touch with you, and I think you guys may have invited some people onto the call as well, we definitely have got links that we can get to. But if somebody had a question for you guys in particular, how would you prefer them to reach out to you, Dr. Kenny and Dr. Eric?
Facebook Messenger. I'm on TikTok.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Platform.
TikTok,
Okay.
Instagram, Facebook, Erik Akin, MD. My
Okay.
Facebook says Mind Fitness Method. It's the old name of my company, but you can still reach me through that business page or my private page,
Perfect.
either one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And Derek,
All right.
I'm sure it's the same way. If you got invited here by somebody particular that is, possibly on this protocol, please get in touch with them. Any of us or any of the folks that are friends of yours that may have shared this link with you, this is going to be put up on, Derek says TikTok Messenger is the best way to get a hold of him, I think.
I'm putting my
So
name here.
if this is going to be, this is going to be up on YouTube as well at Healthy Together and Feeling Great. So this will be in perpetuity. So those people that are not on Facebook, there will be a way to share this with them within the next day or two. So make sure you do that. But it'll also be up here and shared over Facebook Live. So, gentlemen, again, thank you so very much for being part of this first Men's Health and Insulin Resistance Facebook Live and making this, I think, an incredible success and giving some great information. Thank you all so much, and looking forward to doing it again in the future.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.